And that explains why astrology in our timeline, which has been basically conquered by patriarchal, very agenda, specific political agendas, is it's the pseudoscience, it's the joke, it's the hoopla, it's the hoax, and that's by design specifically so that we don't connect the dots and understand what's actually going on here.
When the thoughts are calmly collected and the imagination is properly directed, the dots are easily connected.
Welcome back to another episode of Connecting the Dots. I'm your host, Nico Sofianos, and I'd like to first start off with thanking everybody who's been showing support, lots of engagement in the comment section. I really appreciate, as this is the intention of this. To connect the dots is really to come together as individuals, as a collective, and check each other's perspectives and cross-reference, and that's how we're going to get this. So today's episode is about science and pseudoscience, and is astrology specifically a pseudoscience, and why has it been called this for as long as at least we've been exposed to it? Why, when it's the actual mother of all sciences, how in this day and age and timeline do we call it a pseudoscience? First of all, if you haven't yet, you can show love by hitting that subscribe button. Stay tuned and up to date with what what's going on, and make sure to comment, like. It really helps us with the algorithm to be able to reach more people like you who truly seek the truth. So what is a pseudoscience? Pseudo is, I think, a prefix for half or partial, so not fully. It's not like legit. Basically, is usually how it's utilized. And it often comes from whenever anyone brings up, something like any of the mystical, esoteric sciences, which is actually what they are. They're sciences, but they're esoteric, not exoteric, which just means it's not accepted on the outside. Exo is Greek for out. It is hidden and preserved on the inside, esoterico science. So it actually is a science. But any of these sciences, whenever discussed, whenever brought up around an academic mind, or just anyone in mainstream, you will hear, especially in schools, like teachers or professors, most of the time they're going to say, yeah, it's not a real science. It's kind of like, it's old, it's our old ways. We have come so much farther now, and we're here in this time and place where we have way better technology to understand the psyche. So first of all, let's look at the word psychology, which is where obviously it comes from psyche. And why is it spelled with a P? P-S-Y, right? Psychologia is the word in Greek. And psyche in Greek, where we get psyche, it means soul, which is, if you think of it, like the sun is a du soleil. The word soul is a S-O-L, is also your acronym of speed of light. We're talking about ology, logia just means the study of. We're talking about the study of the psyche. And if the psyche, the word, it means mind, which is actually soul or sun, well, isn't the sun a star, right? That's the first thing. And one of my favorite quotes actually was Nietzsche, who said, as long as you still view the stars as something above you, you lack a certain viewpoint of knowledge. Now that goes back to the Hermetic principle of correspondence, or what you might have heard as above, so below. And the idea, though, of it being a pseudoscience, first of all, I invite anyone who wants to have that conversation here in the comment section to give me or give us your sort of reason behind that. But let me also remind you that reason is, if you read the book Power versus Force by David Hawkins, Professor David Hawkins, he shows a calibration that is literally one of the most groundbreaking discoveries, was using muscle testing, which is the fact that the body knows truth from fallacy, as the body, like nature, are part of something beyond. We're just in this body. We're in this vessel as souls, which thus have minds. But anyways, in his calibration of consciousness, 0 to 1,000, okay, reason only scored at 499. So basically, it's just right before the halfway point. But the point is that you cannot begin to comprehend these concepts if you're only using reason. Now, reason you can also correlate to the left brain, the left hemisphere of the brain, which is the hemisphere of the brain that basically most scholars and academics, I keep saying academia, most academics and scholars, they are utilizing the left brain. Now, why? Because the whole brain, which is what these sciences like astrology require the use of, is not only reason, but then going into the realm, the divine realms of imagination. And like the podcast is really predicated on this one realization that I had, which I distilled into this one simple rhyme, that it was not only when the mind is calmly collected, but it's when the imagination is properly directed. Imagination is more, we're talking about the right hemisphere of the brain. And it is a divine faculty. It is the ability to close our eyes and see with our third eye, see with God's eye, if you will, or something higher in terms of our vision. And there's a reason why it's also connected to intuition, by the way. So imagination and intuition, those are the two divine faculties often that I'm referring to when I'm referring to the right cerebral hemisphere. But because science in the academic world only adheres to facts and all the stuff to do with the left brain, reason, it cannot comprehend. It can only understand. It will never understand the whole picture. So calming the mind, humility, breath work, whatever modality, whatever practice for you to access that 0 point in which literally you are in the center of the hemispheres. I can't remember, corpus, something. There's a sheath in your brain. And this is where we want to get to. That's also where your third eye is, which is literally physiologically the pineal gland. And we get the word pineal from the pine cone. And like the pine cone is a fractal, going back to the principle of correspondence, as above, so below, meaning the pattern continues infinitely upward and downward no matter what. And what this, therefore, third eye, which funny enough has literally cone and rod cells, the same cells that we find in our actual eyeballs, because it is an eye. But in order to get to that point, we need to use the whole brain. We need to calm the mind, and we need to enter the realm of what most people call insane. But I'll tell you, one of the quotes that I had written while I was, because I write a lot of quotes, and I'm often writing them in rhyme so that I can remember. And that's the reason why I created Fit Hop. It was just a way to teach and a way to learn and a way to recall information easier. Why? Because when it has rhythm and rhyme, it's a lot easier to recall, because that's how the brain neurologically organizes and compartmentalizes information and experience. But when I was there, it took me, I realized I kind of had lost my mind. I'd kind of gone insane to some degree. And I think a lot of you guys can agree with me that it takes, this is it, quote, losing your mind to actually finally find your heart. But I think it was like first person. Quote, it took me losing my mind to actually finally find my heart, end quote, something like that. So the point is that what people are calling insane actually is the ability to see with your whole brain and use your whole brain. Now I'm going to tie this together into why being left-handed was a big part of why I've come into this and deeply into this science, esoteric science, because it was when I recognized that the left hand corresponds to the right brain, and there's a lot of science on this, and the right hand, which corresponds more to the left brain. So being left-handed meant that you're likely using more of this hemisphere. You're using more of your imagination. You're using more intuition. And this is not what the patriarchal, fact-based science, we tell you kind of like what's truth, and you just regurgitate the information upon request so that you can graduate on to the next, grade level until you're finally a perfect little slave for our system, which, by the way, to remind you, the 12-step program called the educational system is an indoctrination system written by the Rockefeller, who himself said, he doesn't want people who, a race, he doesn't want a country of thinkers. He wants a country of workers, of course. Anyways, wrapping back to the concept that being left-handed and going to a Catholic school when I was in high school and being told from the Catholic priest that I mustn't use this hand, that I didn't know, but he was like letting me in on something really, like he leaned into me to tell me it is the hand of the devil. And you know what they say about people who are left-handed is that you are the children of the devil. That hit me so hard that it literally it's what has such a big part as to why I went with the degree of scrutiny and into such a mission of inquisition onto understanding religion and all of this psychological understanding. But going back to the difference between understanding, which is standing under, and comprehending or inner standing, is whether you dare to actually go there. And where's there? The whole brain, which requires you to be called or okay with. It requires you to have the courage, the vulnerability, the strength to be the weird one, to be the wrong one most of the time, because we are in a timeline where this left brain has reigned superior. But the fact is that it's actually the right hemisphere that understands archetypes. The word archetype means pattern, okay? And this is the kind of patterns that constellations, which are patterns of stars, that is arguable, because science will tell you, yeah, but those stars are not even the same. They're not even in the same plane of... It doesn't matter. The fact is, just like when you squint your eyes, you see some of those memes. When you squint your eyes and you actually use your whole brain, it doesn't matter where they are. What matters is there they are. And you can see these qualities or these patterns, and everyone can see them who is using the whole brain. And the patterns, as far as the constellations, you think of like the Taurus, for example, the bull. The bull is what we took out during that period of that time, Taurus in spring, to plow the fields, right? So we can plant the seeds. And even if you look at Virgo, which is, the female, the virgin with the wheat sheath, well, why the Taurus and, to plow the seed, so that ultimately with the wheat sheath, she comes and she collects the yield. And this is not a coincidence. Libra, the balance, not only represents the equinoctial point of where the actual balance of day and night happen, September 21st, but Libra also represents, after you go in and you bring in the yield, now you actually weigh it out so that you can make sure you'll have enough. You'll put some in the pantry, but you'll also have enough for the following spring when you got to, do the thing, bring your bull out again. But like all of this, even like the crab represents why they chose the crab. There's also the scarab, which is a different archetype. And I recently had this conversation with someone who was a Cancer, deeply wise and knowledgeable. And that's when he would like kind of lean back and he was like, whoa, yeah, the scarab basically is the beetle, and it correlates to Sophia, wisdom. There's a whole mythology. I don't want to lose track here, but why the crab? Well, it's the point in the precession of the equinoxes, which is essentially just a sine wave where the sun's going up since March 21st, which is the other equinoctial point. That's the sun passing into Aries, which is around now. That's why we celebrate Easter and all these other big Passover, because it's passing over from underground to the north to go up. And it goes all the way up till June 21st, solstice. Stise means still, sol, as in the sun, we just said. And then it moves sideways. And that moving sideways is why we have depicted and we remember that constellation as Cancer. There's also qualities about the actual crab that have to do with the Cancer archetype or pattern, proclivity, way of being, predisposition for human beings who are ruled by this energy predominantly. Another thing, though, people dismiss astrology instantly. Why? Because they don't know astrology. And this is something humans do. And tell me what you think about this. When there's something that you hear about that you don't know about, are you more likely to like really want to go and research and learn about that? Or are you the person who's going to actually be like, yeah, you know what, and you just kind of dismiss it? Well, depends. There's different characters. But there's another thing that's very common. And I remember this in Don Miguel Ruiz's book, about the Toltecs. It was called The Four Agreements. I read this actually while I was in BC planting trees. I read it twice, and then I actually read the Fifth Agreement. But he was talking about how not only do humans do this, when they don't understand something, they just dismiss it. They actually tend to fear what they don't understand, especially if there's some logical sense and possible truth to that which they don't understand. which begs the question, why would you fear? And it's because there might be, like we said, something that you don't know. And if you want to look at it astrologically, the constellation Scorpio rules this. I know something you don't know, and no one wants that. We want to be on the side of we know something someone else doesn't know, because it creates this power differential. And that explains why astrology in our timeline, which has been basically conquered by patriarchal, very agenda, specific political agendas, it's the pseudoscience, it's the joke, it's the hoopla, it's the hoax, and that's by design specifically so that we don't connect the dots and understand what's actually going on here. Understand why even the Christians, for example, you know what I mean? Like, especially the Bible thumping ones, like you talk about astrology and it's just like that Catholic priest told me, like it's that's the way of the devil. Like the Bible forbids we speak about, or look at the stars, you know what I mean? Like actually the entire Bible is a map. It's called astrotheology. It's another branch of astrology. Astrology is the mother science. There's astrophysiology, all right, which Hippocrates himself, father of Western medicine, said, and I quote, "Any doctor that doesn't understand his patient astrologically deems to be called a fool and shouldn't practice medicine." This is only coming words of the father of medicine, right? Anyways, another one, if you want to connect it to money and these elites who clearly have created this as part of the agenda, was J.P. Morgan, who said, millionaires don't believe in astrology, billionaires do. Right, and this is why all the emperors and the high kings and all the people of actual political power had not one, not two, like usually 5 to 10 different astrologers. Man, some of the crazy ones, like the tyrants, like Hitler, would literally have the one shot who, told him what he didn't want to hear as far as what was coming. Because that's all astrology does. It is the mother of all sciences, and it syncretizes is the proper term. It connects them all. It connects them all in a very logical, reasonable, archetypal system of 12. And most people dismissed it because, but there's apparently like the 13th. Yes, you. The 13th is Ophiuchus. He holds the snake, or the staff, which is like this caduceus, this symbol of Western medicine. Funny enough, too, it's medical, the whole medical world who we attribute all of, safety, public safety when it came to COVID and everything. We just trust the science and the medical institution. They literally are using these very esoteric tools, and they've put them right there in our face, and they're literally, meaning the exact opposite thing. But that's a whole other conversation where we can talk about about gematria and how literally our language that we're speaking in today is vibrationally and alphanumerically, because every alpha letter numerically corresponds to a number, but how all of it has been literally flipped 180 degrees. As a sound engineer, there's a button. It's called the phase inversion button. You hit that just so you can, phase the, and see where things are phasing, meaning like things are contradicting each other in terms of a stereo image. I'm getting a little technical here, but anyways, the fact is what we have is the very institution that we put our trust in telling us this stuff is BS, pseudo-science, yet they're championing these symbols and identifying with these symbols. How convenient. It's incredible. The greatest trick they say the devil ever pulled was the one where he made you believe he doesn't exist. Now, by the devil not being a person, okay, because I don't believe the devil is a particular person. I believe it is the behavioral manifestation of human insecurity. But this is a pattern too. And for people who like to play on the I know something you don't know kind of way, that mysterious way, that scorpionic way, which literally represents the serpent, the two actually that go up the caduceus, the staff, which Ophiuchus represents, the 13th, which is you, actually rules that. And that's why even in the Illuminati triangle pyramid, you have this eye, this singular eye that is on the capstone, which is separate from all the rest, because that is what the occult, that is what the occult meaning hidden. That's what these elite have been hiding and forbidding, demonizing and hiding and basically forbidding others to use. And that's why I realized being left-handed was like considered demonic and evil, because it meant, we have one who thinks outside of the box. Let me remind you, Da Vinci, Tesla, another big one I often make reference to, Albert Einstein. Some of the greatest minds who have changed the paradigm of, and course thus, of our whole species, have been left-handed people. So is it really that they're the devil? Or is there a reason why we've demonized them? Going back to, we fear what we don't understand. And because we fear what we don't understand, because it might have power, the worst is, as it said in that book, The Four Agreements, what they would do is they'd actually demonize that which we fear, make it wrong. So using the example of a chair, next thing you know, not only the chair has to be there in a way, like you demonize, so you excommunicate is the proper term, just like people like Pythagoras and all these other great esoteric mystics were, knowledge keepers and mystics were done. Like they're excommunicated. If not like Socrates, who was publicly terminated, they were just excommunicated. So the first thing you do is you kind of move them out of your sphere. Why? Because you were trying to control what's going on here. But then the next thing is, if that's not enough, you'll actually just burn it. Burn it, usually burning. Why? Because it like purifies it. You know what I mean? Like totally destroys it completely. And that's very symbolic as well. Both, though, represent the cult-like strategy, which is an aspect in all humanity, which is that we want to know, and only I think it's called coveting. It's the term. Because covet means kind of jealousy, but it comes from the same place. Like only I want to have that. We can't all have that. There's only so much of that. But that way of thinking is literally also partial. That's pseudo. It's when you're disconnected from the divine that you feel there's not enough, that you're in a scarcity-based mind, and you're not seeing the abundance, and thus wanting everyone to have access to this type of information, to know just how powerful we are. Because it's like his story, okay? The difference between his story, he who wrote the books, and her story, going back to this left and right, is the idea that there is a left brain masculine approach to consciousness, or sort of makeup of consciousness, and there's this right brain feminine approach or makeup of consciousness. But having them together, the yin and the yang, which create, here it is in my fingers, in my hands, it's a mudra, hand signal. What I say, the Big Bang. But before that, it's the yin yang, literally right there. The Big Bang is when you take tension between these two, and with that tension, you bring your hands up over your head, like ascension. You breathe, calmly collecting your mind, and you continue to embrace the tension. Now you see what's happening as your hands come behind your head, over and behind your head. What's happening is your chest opens, your chest being your heart chakra. Your heart, which we know is connected also deeply to the right brain, to imagination, to intuition. But when we have this tension, we breathe, we embrace that the duality is actually part of this singularity, basically entertaining itself, having the ability to even be here, to even do this thing called witness, observe, create. All these things come from this understanding that there's this yin and this yang. And coming back, trying to tie this all together to astrology and why it's a pseudoscience. It's a pseudoscience to the person who still refuses to use, who isn't using his whole brain. And some people, they just don't know. And therefore, when they are shown, then, okay, like they'll start looking into it. And that was me. I literally only started studying astrology because I couldn't debunk astrology. All I knew is I'm a Leo. Apparently that's a good sign because it's the king, the lion, and it's ruled by the sun. It's the only sign that's ruled by the sun. Everything is, well, it all kind of like, had a convenient sort of thing I can identify with. And I'm putting that in quotes because identity is a big deal right now. But it's for those who don't dare to actually lean into and learn and study that which they don't know. For me, it's always been that. But it also was because it was inspired in such a way that like literally like demonized me. It made me feel evil, which like tell me like you don't have times where in your own conscience and mind, especially as a youth, you feel like, oh my God, like evil is in me. And it's like, the answer is, the truth is, it is. Like the great Cherokee tells his grandson, there's two wolves that live in us all, and there's a great battle between these two wolves. And one represents love and generosity and trust and abundance, and the other one represents jealousy and fear and greed and gluttony and all of the, you can look at them as just vices and virtues. And the grandchild asks his grandfather, which one wins that battle? And the grandfather says, the one that you feed the most. This is the best way to comprehend why, or at least how I have come to comprehend and embrace this inner yin and yang in order to see the whole picture. And now I can see like why it is that they cut us off from the right brain. Why? Because same like they made one right and the other wrong. Day was the good, and then Horus, and then Set was evil. Just like we we demonize the feminine Eve, which represents the evening as we're entering the night. So even phonetically, you hear this in the words. And there is a reason. Again, in a patriarchal, male-dominated system, Eve, when the Adam and Eve creation story, will be the one depicted as evil, right? The truth is, both of them are responsible for keeping the Garden of Eden, upkeeping the Garden of Eden. And the only reason that they're kicked out is because Eve was tempted by the serpent. But Adam did too, with his willpower, okay? Eat the apple. Now, there's so much around that story, and it comes back to what that apple also you can see represents is almost like psychedelic medicine, which some people have correlated it to, and it's true to some degree. The proper term is manna, and actually all over the Dead Sea Scrolls, the only non-secular priest, his name was John Mark Allegro. We're going to talk a little bit more about him in a future podcast episode. He was the one who saw that there was this manna, which were mushrooms, a red and white mushroom, specifically the Amanita muscaria mushroom, all over these Dead Sea Scrolls. And why? Well, because apparently, like the apple, what this does is it creates this neurologic, all your neurotransmitters just light up with what's called entheogens. And an entheogen, if you break down that word, is theos is God. Entheo is also enthusiasm. It gets you lit up about and able to thus see the God within all of nature and you and me and everybody and everything, so why would they call it a pseudoscience? Because it conveniently makes you look to be the hoax, the insane, and that's just an easy way, just like conspiracy, a term that, we use now to just dismiss that maybe it's some facts you haven't researched yet. And, and maybe it's true, like something was planned behind the scenes that we don't know about by a certain group, a certain few whose agenda was to do exactly what they've done so successfully. And that's continued to create these crazy spells and like all these other crazy things, like whether it's the Twin Towers, which represent the Tower of Babel, or whether it was, there's all kinds of them. They're all sacrifices, and they're all like weird spells and magic that some people give huge belief in, and perhaps it works for them, like the Ouija board and all that stuff. Although people like me, I don't not believe in it. I'm aware of it. I know it exists, but I don't believe in it because I see the lie, and hence the word believe is B-E-L-I-E. There's lie in belief. And this age that we're coming out of, the age of Pisces, all right, Pisces is the verb I believe. Sure enough, it's the age, the last couple thousand years, in which the religious institutions flourished. It wasn't like it was initially indigenously, small tribes and indigenous vibes. You know what I'm saying? Like people connecting to nature and God in the real natural way. No, I'm talking about like building the church and like having all these very doctrines, right? Very structured left brain style of order in order to establish, and colonize what we are now living in, the progressive West, right? I feel, again, just a reminder, if you haven't yet subscribed, please help this channel, like, comment, really engage with this conversation, because It's really about that. And truth doesn't exist in any one perspective. It really is the pattern that is observed within the collective. And that's what I intend by cross-referencing, by having this conversation and this kind of dialogue. We're further, you can look at it like Spartans, man. We're like sharpening each other's swords. And sure enough, the word sword, sacred word. That's what that is. Because the real sword, the real weapon of choice is the human voice. And this is also why at the core of all religions, you have the God's spell, gospel. They call it worshiping. When we're singing, what we're doing is just incantations, are putting sounds into the human voice. And when you have these different modes and intervals and notes sung in certain cadences and ways, what you have is literally the ability to create miracles, which are what Einstein described as a paradigm shift, a temporal paradigm shift. That's a miracle, simply. But in the age of Pisces, speaking of Einstein, you have belief, which ruled the religious institutions. Now we're moving into this age of Aquarius, the verb I know. So now it's no longer about what you believe in. It's about what you know, bro. It doesn't matter whether you believe in astrology. You can call it a pseudoscience all you want. Just like gravity. You cannot believe in gravity either. But guess what? You go jump off that bridge. What's going to happen? Right? Like we got to recognize that we are now in the age of knowing. And not know as in like the arrogant, I know, because that's the shadow side of Aquarius. I'm talking about the real light side of being able to say no. Why? I don't believe. No. And I choose not to believe and give my imagination, my power, my whole hemispheres, left and right, to this agenda here. No, because I know something. That's why they phonetically sound similar. Know as in K-N-O-W, as in knowledge, gnosis, gnoso. Gnosotonamphtonmu, like I know myself, and that's why I say no. And that's the rebellious side of Aquarius in this age that we're in, and we're witnessing it. And this is also why you see it being hijacked. And the hijacking is exactly what the whole transgender agenda is. And I'm going to speak more to that next in the next episode. But I want to kind of wrap it with just a reminder that pseudo just means partial and not, fully, like fake, half. But yet what we're describing when we're calling astrology a pseudoscience is the very science that we are accepting is the science. So how paradoxical, because the true holy science, the whole picture, which is holy, hallowed be thy name, hallow like a halo, a whole, a circle, singularity and self-similarity, that concept of as above, so below, on earth as it is in heaven. It's all in the Bible. And it's like the only way to get the whole picture is to use the whole brain. So I invite you to continue to do the work of collecting your mind and directing your imagination, learning more about these archetypes. There are so many channels. There's such incredible content, guys. We are in the best timeline to be alive. Yes, there's two possibilities. And I don't think just two. We can see it more than a Y. There is like almost like an infinite amount of possibilities that we can go. The question is, moment to moment, where are you going within yourself? And what do you know about yourself so that you can choose and not confuse your soul guidance with your ego's distraction? Because we talked about this in another episode where there was desire with a capital D, that which like literally you came here to achieve, and desire with a small d, which is the earthly, pleasures and sensations that we desire that then confuse us. That's from our ego individuated, disconnected from spirit side that desires. And therefore, by being moment to moment able to know whether we're in our soul guidance or in our ego's noise and distraction and needs to achieve, is what's going to allow us to continue to breathe deeply and feel holy, truly holy, and thus think holy with our whole brain. I hope that really made some sense for you. If you guys, again, like this channel or this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share with other friends, other people who you know are seeking the truth and the knowledge. And remember, when the mind is calmly collected and the imagination is properly directed, the dots are easily connected. I'm your host, Nico Sofianos. Remember who you are.